Man, what a busy night in Tampa Bay sports. We've got the NFL draft finally here. Bucs picking 19th overall. I'm going to guess they're going to make a pick somewhere between, I don't know, 10:40, 10:45 to 11:15 or so. And then prior to that, you've got the Tampa Bay Lightning with game 2 of their series against the Florida Panthers. See if they can bounce back from that game 1 loss. Almost have to be honest, to have a chance in the series. And then the Rays wrap up their series, I guess, in Arizona. So uh, it's a busy night. You can kind of stack your television viewing or whatever it's going to be. And, I think of all those things, obviously game 2 is the most important. We're into the playoffs and the postseason. It's a critical game because if you lose this one, you're looking at trying to win 4 out of 5, which I don't necessarily see them doing. So we'll get into that. But I wanted to start with the draft because, the further down you pick in the NFL draft, the less certainty there is of anything. I mean, the only team that knows what they're doing is the Tennessee Titans, right? And they're going to take a quarterback. And so that part's easy. You got the first pick. No one can take it from you unless you want to deal it. And, that's beyond that. Who knows? I was listening to a lot of the pundits on the NFL shows, and they were saying how there could be a lot of action, or there's been a lot of talk at number 2 with the Cleveland Browns, at number 3 with the New York Giants, teams moving up. Jerry Jones, you see the other day, Steve, he came out and said, I think there'll be a substantive trades that we'll be involved in. Like, what does that mean? Where are you going up for? Quarterback? Like, I don't know. He hadn't made a significant trade in a while. So, but the first round, is usually a surprise or two, but mostly goes chalk until you get to a point where its beauty is in the eye of the beholder. And where the Bucs are at 19, good luck. I mean, good luck trying to figure out who's going to be on the board. It's their job to know, and they'll come in after they make their choice, and they'll say, "Yep, it went exactly the way we thought it would go. We got our guy. He was our highest rated guy. We'd have taken him at number, 12 or 10 or 5. Best player on the board, couldn't be happier, and then that's your first round pick. But for them, there's a lot of intrigue. There's a lot of intrigue just about the draft for them in the beginning. I think, and we talked about this the other night. Like, are they going to really deal Rashad White over this weekend, over these 3 days? Like, is that going to happen? Is that a thing? Adam Schefter thinks it might be. He was listing players that could be traded. Again, because Rashad's in the final year of his contract and all of that. And, he's lost his starting job to Bucky Irving. They still have Sean Tucker. So they have a lot of ways to go there. But Rashad, as much as anything, and I think we said this the other night, was if he's going to be traded, it's because he's disgruntled and he doesn't want to be there either. That he feels like it's time for him to move on. Dallas supposedly is another team that's looking for running backs that could be one of those in play with that. Beyond that, we've talked about the possibility of them landing a wide receiver. I think it's malpractice if they come out of this draft and they don't have an edge rusher, if they don't have an inside linebacker, and if they don't have a corner. Like, those 3 positions need to be addressed early and often, or they've not improved their football team. Last year they needed to improve. The biggest need, you'd say, going into it was, hey, we can't be the worst rushing team in football, right? Like, we can't do that. And Robert Hainsey had been their center for a couple of years. Graham Barton was sitting there for him. They took him. He absolutely helped transform the offensive line, as did Ben Bredesen, and some of the moves they made in the offseason. And then they went from last in the league the previous 2 years to 4th in rushing. And so that was a significant upgrade, right? That was a targeted, hey, we've got to get better here. Let's go get our guy. It lined up. The player was there. I think he's going to be a Pro Bowler before his career is over. He's a smart kid. He's conscientious. He hadn't played center since his freshman year in college, but he made that transition and he did very, very well. And they did great, as a team running the football. And then they knocked it out of the park, not so much with the second pick because of Chris Bradwell, who didn't really pan out as a rookie. But then after that, you're talking about guys like Tyke Smith and Bucky Irving and Jalen McMillan. I mean, you come anywhere close to that, Steve, with getting young, productive starters as rookies, guys that can come in 1,000-yard rusher, a guy that can put up 7 touchdowns in the final 5 games at receiver. This center who was a stud all year long, only missed 1 game. I mean, you have another one of those drafts, and you do that on defense. Now you've got something, because they scored 29.5 points a game last year.
And the entire offense is back.
Everybody's back except the play caller.
Play caller. Unless you trade Rachaad White, that would change.
But. Yeah, but Sean Tucker, the calculus is that you're better with Sean Tucker, right? Like, and Rachaad, you're at the point where you're not going to give him a free agent contract in as much as, if he asks for any money at all. He's not going to be a guy that you're going to sign to a long-term deal, given the fact, that Bucky Irving is still healthy and still running the way he did as a rookie. I mean, Bucky Irving, look, he started 2 games of the ones that White was active for. He started 3 total. The one in New Orleans when him and Sean Tucker, ran wild, and Tucker had 160-something of those yards, and they ran for over 200. But then the other 2 were the final 2 games of the regular season. And again, we talked about this with Skip Pete saying you need more than one running back. Yeah, that's true. But it doesn't have to be Rachaad White and somebody else. It can be, Sean Tucker and Bucky Irving and somebody else. So there will be somebody to carry the football, but Bucky's going to be your bell cow. And I'm sorry, I want him on the field. I thought the mistake they made after the New Orleans game, White came back and they started him the rest of the season until the last 2 weeks. Like, why? Well, he can't lose a job to his injury. I think Todd Bowles' handprint was all over that. I don't think that was Skip Pete. I don't think it was Jason Light. I don't think it was, anybody. I think it was just Bowles deciding that, we're going to stand by our guy, and they're both going to play. But if I'm starting a game that I need to win, and which one don't you need to win in the NFL? But if I'm starting a game, I want my best players on the field on offense. I may get 10, 12 possessions, and hell, in the playoff game, you get like 6 or 7. But I can't afford to go a whole series with Rachaad White averaging 3.6. I can't, Now, if I'm going to throw it to him, sure. Or if I'm going to throw the ball in general and I need him to pass protect, okay, if that's the game plan. They found a way to get him and Bucky on the field together. But, to enter the draft thinking you're going to move a Rachaad White, and what could you get for him, right? 4th round, 5th round pick? I'm not sure exactly what you would get, especially the guy that's got 1 year left on his deal. So
I mean, what you may be able to get is if you want to move up at some pick.
Yeah,
you trade some picks and Rachaad White to move up somewhere, and maybe not the first round, but maybe it's a 2nd or 3rd round move up.
Right? Yeah, that makes sense. That's currency.
That may be where you see him traded more than just a flat out trade. Like, hey, we want to move up 5 spots in the 2nd round or 3rd round.
Yeah.
We'll give you this pick, and instead of other later picks or a pick next year,
we'll flip spots with you. We'll move up 3, 4, whatever. You also get Rachaad White, and your guy will still be there 3 picks from now.
Yep.
So but it's intriguing. Last year it was in March when they traded Carlton Davis to the Detroit Lions. And there was a similar situation that they are now with Jamel Dean. I thought Dean would be the guy that would be on the move in this draft. Now, you wouldn't do that unless you had a corner that you drafted, maybe in the 1st round. Like, first or second day, if you get a corner is going to be your starter, bar none, then maybe by the 3rd day you trade Jamel Dean, who's going to cost a lot on your salary cap. That could still happen, right? They're saying all the right things. Oh, we think he's still a good player if he can stay healthy. Well, he's never stayed healthy, So that was similar with Carlton Davis. And what happened? Carlton went up there, played really good football for a few weeks in Detroit, and then got hurt, and now he's with another team. That could still be Jamel Dean before it's over with. I didn't think it was going to be Rachaad, and maybe it won't. Maybe they won't get any value for him. But yeah, you make a good point. That might be something where, hey, we're going up 3 spots for a guy. We'll give you Rachaad White, maybe in lieu of another draft pick, just to jump a couple spots. But there's got to be a market for him. And there are teams that need running backs. But my God, how many running backs are in this draft? They got Bucky Irving in the 4th round. Jason Light said if he could do it over again, he'd have taken him probably in the 1st or the 2nd round. Now, that's just fodder for the agent the next time his deal comes up. But, it worked out well for him. But other teams can get running backs 3rd, 4th, sometimes 5th, There are free agent running backs that do well in this league. It just all depends. But I think defense is a way that there's going to be. I think there's going to be a player there, whether it's the edge rusher that they're looking for. Um, there's a lot of ways they can go. I still think the value in the draft, the value positions, it starts with quarterback. Always starts with quarterback. After that, it's a little bit of beauty's in the eye of the beholder, but not really, right? It's the guys who can affect the quarterback. You either have the quarterback, you get them, or you get guys who can affect the quarterback on defense. And that's your edge rushers who, that's why they make $35 million a year if you're great. It's the corners who can lock down those receivers to help those guys get to the quarterback, who can make interceptions and plays on the ball, and so and sometimes some drafts it's defensive tackles that are those elite players. Every now and then there'll be an Aaron Donald or somebody like that, a Warren Sapp. So the closer you are to the line of scrimmage, generally the bigger impact you have on the game, right? There's some safeties and guys that are elite like Antoine Winfield Jr. was a couple of years ago. But if you're talking about defense, they clearly have a need: edge rusher, inside linebacker, corner in some order. And Jihad, to my thinking, if they don't get an edge rusher, if they evaluate that those guys are gone by the time they get to number 19, and you've got a Jihad Campbell or somebody like that, you got to take them. You take them, and then you figure out how Servassier Dennis figures in. How can we get three linebackers on the field during certain plays and take the nickel out, or play the nickel and play extra defensive back? Like, there's a lot of smoke and mirrors that Todd Bowles can dial up, but you've got to get somebody at each level, in my mind, in this defense to make it Super Bowl worthy, because it's not. And the offense is. I think you can reasonably say that, you don't have Liam Cohen's genius right now going for you, and we're not sure what that's going to look like without him. But you've got the pieces, and guys got to stay healthy. But assuming all of that, and you scored 29 and a half, your offense is not what's going to hold you back. You got a Super Bowl potential on offense. Now, they didn't play that way against Washington. They made mistakes. They turned the ball over, but they only had the ball 6-7 times.
Yep.
So improve that defense and give the ball back to Baker Mayfield 12, 11, 12, 14 times a game. You're going to score 30 points a game. You're going to win most of them.
Which is why, and I know that Jason Light and Todd Bowles have mentioned, and they're going to take a receiver at some point in this draft. They've got to start planning for life after Mike Evans, life after Chris Godwin.
They have to.
Right. With that being said, if they took one in the first round, I'd be shocked. And
would you be shocked though?
I'd be
really shocked?
I would be disappointed. And granted,
that's fair.
Granted, you have to give Jason Light the benefit of the doubt that if he's taking a receiver there, that is by far the best player on their board. But they have so many needs on defense.
Yeah.
Like, if you think that's a Super Bowl caliber offense, then you've got to fix that defense to be Super Bowl caliber now. Like, you can't just go take a receiver and something else and we'll fix the defense as we go along. Like, if you think your offense is Super Bowl caliber now, then almost every resource in this draft should be put towards defense. And I'm not saying a third round, you want to take a receiver, you find another Jalen McMillan, great. Like, I'm not opposed to taking a receiver because you do have to figure that out.
But what if, and because I agree with you, by the way, I looked at this and I keep thinking, they're not going to take a receiver in the first round, are they? But just to play devil's advocate, like, what if you think that Ted McMillan, imagine having two guys named McMillan at receiver on this team. It'd be like a law firm, right? McMillan and Catania. McMillan and McMillan, the guy from Arizona, or a Matthew Golden who has elite speed, right? A game breaker down the field, like, oh my God, like you know, and you can be mentored for a year at least, maybe two, but at least a year or so with Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. You get the benefit of these young guys learning. And if you get an injury to them and they're older, and we don't know what Chris Godwin is going to be, and we don't know that Mike Evans is going to play every game or get his 1,000 yards.
Yep.
You know, that allows you to function, because all I know is when Mike Evans went down with the hamstring, he went down early, I think, against New Orleans, but he was down for basically 4 games. And Chris Godwin turned his ankle around. Their record was 0-4. Now they scored points. They were resourceful. Kate Otten got the ball, and you started spreading it around, and you had your Sterling Shepherds and different dudes, trying to step up, and that was great. That was creative. They went from about 30 points a game to about 23 and a half, but they lost every game. Okay,
Yep.
So that could happen again. Like you could maybe not even get to game 1 without one or both of them. We don't know what Chris Godwin's status is week 1, wherever they play. We don't know. So you're sitting here with McMillan, who, granted, had a good last 5 weeks of the season, but he did it as a number 3. He didn't do it as the number 1 or number 2 receiver. And so, it's beauty's in the eye of the beholder. Right. Do they need defense? Yes. But this league is about scoring points. And
it is, but nothing you've said is wrong.
Yeah.
But if my top receivers go down, or God forbid Baker Mayfield has to sit out a game or 2,
right?
What's the best way I'm going to win a game? It ain't going to be by my 4th-string receiver coming in, and I'm hoping he can play like a 1 or a 2. It's going to be stopping the other team.
Yeah.
And their defense is not good enough at this point to get to a Super Bowl. And so my first-round draft, unless none of my positions of need have a guy that's worthy of picking at that spot, I expect them to take defense in the first round.
I do too.
Absolutely. And if they don't, I'd be shocked. And I'm not going to say
there's 3 positions you could choose from too.
Exactly. And that's my point, is that you need help on all 3 levels of defense.
That's right.
Yes. If Mike Evans and Chris Godwin go down again, is your offense going to suffer? Absolutely it is. And I don't care if you took the best receiver in this draft. They're not as good as Mike Evans or Chris Godwin at this point in their career, period.
No, they're not.
I mean, maybe they're a better fill-in than whoever the other option is.
Well, upside, sure.
But if you could prevent teams from scoring, you got a better shot to make it through. I mean, even with Evans and Godwin out, they were still on 23 and a half points a game. You can win games in the NFL with that.
Yeah, if their defense had been a little better, or if they hadn't turned the ball over, they would have won. Right.
And that's where, like I said, do I expect them to take a receiver? Yes. Do they need to take one? Most likely. Assuming they're not reaching for someone, 3rd round, whatever. But, the hard part about the draft is you have to balance 2 things. You have to balance the needs of your team right now, but you're also balancing the future.
Right.
Mike Evans isn't going to be here forever. Chris Godwin's not going to be here forever.
Well, and that's the GM's job, right? Well, the GM's job is to say, look, I know you want to win on Sunday, but I want us to win next year and the year after that. And that's how he keeps his job.
Absolutely. But it's a different circumstance. But think back 4 years ago. In the 2nd round, the Bucs, coming off a Super Bowl, had needs, but they took Kyle Trask as a backup quarterback for the future, for a year or 2 from now, because Tom Brady wasn't going to always be there.
You're saying there's players that could have helped him besides Kyle Trask, who's
Possibly.
Never played?
And I'd have to go back and look, but
Oh, no, there was somebody.
Well, absolutely. But I mean, I'm not saying it was the wrong pick at the time, because you do have the part about the GM is you're planning for this year and the future.
Well,
like the moves you make, the signings you do, you're planning this year, but also 2-3 years out. And so do you want to take your 1st-round pick? That was a 2nd-round pick. It was late. It was almost a 3rd-round pick. It was the last pick of the 2nd round.
It was, yeah.
So a little less risk than a 1st-round pick. Like, do I want my 1st-round pick to be my 3rd or 4th receiver this year, or would I rather be a starting edge rusher, linebacker, or cornerback? I want defense, unless there's just nobody there that fits that in the mold.
Well, I want defense too, but I think you get into one of these things where everybody says they're going to take the best player, and what they mean is the best player at their biggest need. And you got to be very careful that, even though that you've got to improve the defense, like you said, like we got to come out of this draft with an edge rusher. We got to come out with an inside linebacker. We need another corner. You still don't pass on a great player. Like, if they think, McMillan or, uh, Matthew Golden of Texas. I mean, here's a guy. I tell you what, man, this guy ran a 4.29, okay, at the combine. 58 catches, 987 yards, 9 touchdowns at Texas.
Mm-hmm.
Blazing speed, highly productive, stud, right? Like, yeah, I'll take some of that. Is that going to help me get off the field on third down? No. But I'm the GM of the Bucs, and I'm telling you that Matthew Golden's a better damn player, than the defensive players staring at me at 19. And I'm going to take Matthew Golden because I want the best players.
And that's where I said if they took a receiver, I'd be shocked and maybe disappointed a little bit. But Jason Licht's also earned the benefit of the doubt that if he's taking a receiver there, then they think that receiver is significantly better than the other players that they could have taken at positions of need. And so, I mean, like I said, I wouldn't be angry. I wouldn't be upset. Just I would be shocked and then really curious how they're going to make this defense better. Almost every pick after that would have to be defense, at least for the next few rounds.
I would think so. But part of it is who's left and who could fall to the second round.
Absolutely.
If say Mike Green from Marshall is their highest rated edge guy, and he's gone. Well, and James Pierce is their second guy, and he's gone. And you go down the line, and you're like, okay, well, what about Shamar Stewart from A&M? He might be there, later on. Like, you just kind of. I think there's going to be a run though. What we see in the draft is this: the edge rusher comes off, the next edge rusher comes off, the next edge rusher comes off. You see runs at positions, and teams will trade up because they don't want to be, they've got 4 guys with a first round grade. And if they're picking, they don't want to be left without one of those guys. So you'll see a run at that position. Like we'll see it happen. It's like the stock market. So if the run happens and there's nobody left, like, and then the other part of it is like, what's the evaluation? I was talking to Booker McFarland the other day. He called me and was asking me about the draft. And Booker's great, by the way. I love talking to him.
Let me get that name for you.
Yeah, I know. Well, he's going to come on the show.
It's not Taylor Swift name drop.
No, well, yeah, exactly. We got that on the radio show today. Like, what the heck? By the way, you got to listen to our radio show, ESPN Tampa Bay, every Monday morning or every Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. So Booker's like, "What's up, baby? How's it going, baby?" I was like, "Good. What's going on, Booker?" "Oh, same thing, man. What's up, baby? What's going on? The Bucs gonna do?" It's like, we're having this discussion, and he was saying how. Campbell makes sense. Different guys make sense, but he's talking about, a lot of people don't like James Pierce Jr., man. I mean, but how's he say? If I got a choice between a Ford pickup and a Mercedes, I might not have to go 150 miles an hour every day, but I know if I got the Mercedes, I can at least do it. I can at least get there, So he's talking about Pierce, and he has an elite skill set. The production wasn't quite what you wanted to be in college, right? Although he was a great player. He's all SEC player. But in terms of sacks or something like that. But the dude is a freak, right? As an athlete. Don't you want that skill set and try to develop that as opposed to a lesser player who you can play right now? Like these are all the calculus that these guys have to kind of go through. And so, whether it's Williams at Georgia or, Donovan Aziraku from Boston College, like there's going to be somebody that might slip down to 19 that is an edge rusher. And that's going to be what they have to decide is the upside and the value of this position, because the value of edge rusher is so much higher than inside linebacker or even corner at times. But then I say this too, like, and Larry Foote's going to now coach the outside linebackers, which I think is a great development for them. But who are you bringing along? Like Yaya Diaby took a step back. He went from 7.5, 4.5 sacks. Like, is he going to be a guy or not? Right? Like, can you draft and develop players? Because I haven't seen them do that at that position. Not under Jason Licht. They've signed free agents. Shaq Barrett, JPP, they traded for. And they're trying to do that this year, obviously, with Hassan Reddick. But to this point, I haven't seen them, draft and or develop. I mean, JTS was supposed to be that guy, and a lot of reasons why JTS didn't work out here, but he didn't work out here, and it's the same coaching staff roughly. Now, Foote is back at outside linebackers where he was when they had JPP and those guys, so maybe that helps. Mike Caldwell's back to coaching inside linebackers, and he was part of the Super Bowl, defensive staff. So all those things might make a difference, but you still have to look at the value of the position. And that's where we get back to that discussion we just had about the receiver. Like, are you trying to win now, or are you just trying to take the best? Just take the best. I think if you err on the side of this is the better player, right? He's going to be the better player. If you just do that and you get the first pick right, the rest of it all seems to fall in place. It just does. Bucky Irving, like Jason Light said, if I didn't know Bucky Irving was going to do what he did, 1,100 and something yards, I'd have taken him higher than the fourth round. Same with Jalen McMillan. So there's guys all through the draft. That's why they get paid to evaluate. But it's going to be interesting because I think one of those edge guys might be there. I think a linebacker that they like will be. I think they'll probably have 2 or 3 players to choose from. And then it's just a matter of, what we don't know is what were the visits like? Who are these guys? Do they love football? Do they meet that silhouette that's Levante David on the, in the war room with all those attributes? They've done a pretty good job of finding the right guys. So I think from that standpoint, you got to give them the benefit of the doubt. Hey, you know what they can do when they sign a player? They draft one in the first round, and he gets that big bonus in a few days, weeks, months, whatever. Take him on down to Breitling Boutique International Plaza Mall. Take him down there. It's the center of the mall, upstairs. Great store, Breitling Boutique. One of the best Swiss watches you're ever going to make or find anywhere. They've been in business. Breitling has for 140 something years. They've been in International Plaza for about 5 years. And it's a tremendous store. They're used to dealing with first round picks and Buccaneers and Major League Baseball players and such, but they're going to treat you just as they treat them as a celebrity that you are. What a collection of watches, men's and women's watches. The men's, the Navitimers, the Chronomats, women's watches, sports watches. These things are absolutely beautiful. All different colored wristbands. They're durable. If your wife or girlfriend is on the go, they're going to hold up and look beautiful all the time. And ever since going back to the holidays, they've done this thing with celebrating the NFL's 104th year anniversary. 32 different NFL team watches while they last, with the team logo colors on these beautiful Chronomat watches. You have to see them. Go to our website. You'll probably check out the Buccaneers team watch at Breitling Boutique. It is a tremendous place to find the timepiece you've been waiting for. Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall. Make sure you let them know that you heard about it on Sports Day Tampa Bay. All right, game 2, Tampa Bay Lightning. What adjustments is John Cooper going to make? Or does he just say, hey, guys, we're not that far off. We just got to play a little bit better on defense, and we'll get right back in this series. I think, Steve, that there is a high amount of pressure on this hockey team. We're going to find out, like, what they're made of in terms of just the makeup, because that building, if they fall behind a goal or two at Amalie Arena in this game, the wind's going to be sucked out of that building, and you're going to feel it. And the pressure and the expectation. Now, it's one game. You got to win one hockey game, and everything's fine. But I think there's so much pressure on them, and the way Florida played. Look, the Lightning did some good things, but it wasn't nearly enough. And starting with the penalty kill and stuff like that, they've got to be a totally different sense of energy. And I know that the energy was down necessarily. I had somebody, I think I was talking to Tom Jones, our former radio partner, told me he went to the game, and he said, Rick, it didn't feel like a playoff atmosphere. He goes, the fans were, they were okay in the beginning, but then he goes, even after the Lightning scored to tie it up in the first period, he goes, it just didn't really have the buzz. Now, I wasn't there. But if that's true, I think it's because people were nervous for him. You know,
Yeah, I mean,
like,
the way Florida played particularly at the beginning of the game, they got that lead quickly.
yeah, right off the bat.
It did take some energy out of the building.
4 minutes, yeah.
Now, when the Lightning scored, and then they kind of turned it on after that. Definitely, once they got the goal 2-1 and went to the second period, it did hurt.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
that was a tough one.
I think what the Lightning have to do, they got to play a north-south game. They spent too much time going east-west, passing the puck behind their net, back and forth. They got to get out of the zone quicker.
But wasn't that's Florida's game though? The forechecking that they do,
Exactly.
They keep the pucks deep. You can't get it out. They
it's not so
compete
much
for
you
everything.
can't. It's take the easy, chip it out.
Yeah,
put it high in the air. Quit trying to hold possession
and skate across the blue line.
When you have a team that forechecks as hard as Florida does,
you got to get rid of it, right?
Watch what Florida did once they got the lead. Just get the puck out.
In.
It's not chipping it in, getting out of your zone.
Oh, they get it out. Yeah,
get the puck, get it out of the zone. That's where the Lightning. That's where they didn't execute. There was too much passing back and forth behind the net, getting it stolen.
But isn't that where Ryan McDonough? We talked about these guys that how much better they are on defense, how calm he is in those situations. Sure. It didn't develop on it.
But Ryan McDonough's not out there for 60 minutes again.
No, you're right.
I mean,
you're right.
To be honest, Lilleberg and Perbix did not play a good game. They were not very good.
Okay.
And they kept getting hemmed in their zone and couldn't get the puck out and kept going back and forth. And, you'd see the puck stolen. I mean, the power play was 3 of the goals.
Yeah.
I mean, and Florida's got a good power play, Matthew Tkachuk being back. The Lightning did not match the intensity of Florida, but more importantly, they weren't going north-south. When they go north-south, they're a really good team. When they go east-west and try to hold possession, it's a good team like Florida who forechecks the way they do, they struggle. Go north-south. But
so the other part saying play their game and dump it in and go chase it? Is that what you mean?
The Lightning could play that game. They play north-south a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, is it easier to go behind your neck when they're forechecking that way? Yes. But this is the playoffs. Don't take the easy way out. Make the smart play and get it out.
Yeah.
One thing, and the whole point, too, of this, unlike the regular season, and you don't experience it in football because it's one game, but in the regular season, you go to this town, you play this team, and you're in the next city, and the next night you play a team, and a couple nights later you're in another city. Then you come home for a few games, but it's a different team every night coming in. You do a little pre-scout. You go, okay, this team likes to do this on the power play. They'd like to do this. Da, da, da. A series is different. Okay, so now you have game 1. Now what adjustments do you make? What adjustments does Paul Maurice make? And what adjustments does John Cooper make? John Cooper's very good at this. The Lightning in franchise history, just so you know, 12 times before this series. So 12 series before, they've lost game 1 at home. You know what their record in the series is on those 12 series?
No.
8-4. They lose game 1 on home ice. They've won 2/3 of the series in their history, the franchise history. It's about adjustments. Now, is the pressure on Tampa Bay tonight? Absolutely it is. You don't want to go down 0-2 and then have to go on the road for the next 2. Is it doable? Yes, but you don't want to do that. The pressure's on Tampa Bay tonight. Florida's kind of playing with house money. You already got your win. You already got your win on the road.
They have home ice advantage right now before they play game 2. Yeah.
Yes, they do. But it's about adjustments now. What is John Cooper going to do? And the big one's going to be, is Anthony Cirelli available? We don't know that answer.
Right, that'd be a huge loss.
Lightning did not practice on Wednesday. They had a very optional skate. They did a lot of video work and all that stuff, but no skates. We don't know about Cirelli's status. That's if he's not available. I mean, that's part of. I'm not going to say that's why they gave up 3 power play goals, which they hadn't done all season. But your top penalty kill unit, one of your top guys, maybe the top guy in the penalty kill unit, wasn't there for those 3 power plays.
Let me say something else too, and it your best players need to play like your best players,
Yep.
And this is now, if I read John Romano's column correctly, and I might be wrong, and not that you count on him for all the goals, but I think it's 10 playoff games in a row where Nikita Kucherov has not scored.
I believe it's 11 now.
It's 11 now. That can't happen, right? Like, and whether he gets a goal or not, he has to be your best player. Of course, they're going to look for Kucherov, and of course, they're not going to give him much time or space. and all of that. That's part of what he deals with on a nightly basis. But I'll be damned, like, and the same is true with Vasilevsky or anyone else that's a core of this team.
Mm-hmm.
Your best players come to play. Every one of Florida's top players did something to help them win. Every single one of them, and Tkachuk hadn't played for the longest time, and he got 2 goals, be it on the power play, whatever.
Kind of like when Kucherov didn't play a whole season and came back for the playoffs and had a
Correct.
phenomenal game 1.
Yes, he did. But to go 11 games without scoring in the postseason in a row, now would be a good time to turn back into that guy.
Right.
And so they need those. They need they need Victor Hedman. They need Vasilevsky to stand on his head. You need to be great at a time when it matters the most. And nobody was great in game 1. You just can't say that they were. Mm-hmm. I give Cooper a lot of credit because I'm sure that it bothered him the way the result. Didn't seem that upset about the way they played per se. I mean, he knew what happened. He saw what happened in the game.
I think the message in the room is very different than the message John gives to.
I would agree.
The media, always has been. I mean, for those fans that are like, why isn't John Cooper more upset? Have you ever seen him come out
He's
after
never
a game
been like that
and rip his
Nope.
team? I mean,
nope.
If they played a really poor game, he'll be critical, but not in a way that he's tearing paint off the walls. He's not John Tortorella in the post-game press conference.
No, God, no.
He's very measured. Now, that doesn't mean in the room he's that way.
Right.
I think there are times he is that way.
Right.
And I think there are times he's very good at knowing what his team needs and when.
When to give him the stick and when to give him the sugar, know?
But to the media afterwards,
he's
almost
even-keeled.
Always the sugar. Yeah, he's very even-keeled and measured and very lawyer-like.
His favorite comment is, well, it's like every question. Yeah. If you have a theory, he's not buying into it.
But you can see the lawyer in him.
Oh, yeah.
It's very
stoic. Yeah.
Stoic, predictable what he's going to say.
Mm-hmm.
Well thought out ahead of time. He's
going
not
to make a case for his team. Yeah.
He's not just shooting off the cuff angry like some coaches have, and we've seen over years. Like, that's not John. And
no.
If you think that he's going to be that way or expect him to be, then you haven't watched for the last 12 seasons.
Right.
Because that's not the way he does things in public.
Yeah. I also don't think he has to tell these guys in this team with the experience and the playoff experience they've had that they didn't play well, or not well enough to win. Like, they know, okay, some of the things they got to do different, some of the things they got to do better. He doesn't have to say much, although I'm sure he did, but not to the media. But yeah, he's very even-keeled.
I think most of his message at this point isn't you didn't play well. It's here's what we're going to do differently. Here's what
you
got to
adjust.
And John Cooper in game 2s in his career has been fantastic.
Right.
Again, it's that adjustments. Okay, now we see what Florida threw at us. And to be honest, they had so many players come back, you didn't even know what that Florida team was going to be like.
It looked a lot like the Florida team from a year ago.
Well, sure, absolutely. But now you see, okay, here's what they're going to do.
Sam Reinhart and,
Here's the matchups they want. Here's the defensive pairing they're putting out when we have this forward out. And, now you get those ebbs and flows of a series, which is why, momentum doesn't necessarily carry game to game. I think
so. You think it's the X's and O's and not the Jimmies and the Joes?
I think it's both.
Yeah.
But I think if you have the right game plan in, it sure helps the Jimmies and the Joes. Right?
Yeah. Did Florida do something that was out of character for them in game 1? Because I didn't think they did.
No, I thought they were the hungrier team. They played with more.
Seemed like they beat them to every puck.
The Lightning seemed a half step slower everywhere.
Slower, yeah,
absolutely. I'm not going to say they. The Lightning.
So
did not
what
play
is
a good
that?
Game.
What is that? Okay, what is that? You're at home. It's the playoffs. Your crowd's all up into it. How are you a step slow?
Well, it's either
they're better. You're not prepared.
Possibly. Or did they just come out at a higher level?
Maybe.
You know how momentum goes in a game. They got the goal quickly early.
Yeah, that's certainly.
Does doubt creep in your head?
But then you scored before the first period's over. But then you gave up that second goal. Man, was
that
such
was
a killer.
The killer. That was a killer, and then that was the biggest killer. Absolutely. If you go to the intermission 1-1, it's a whole different thing.
I agree.
Then once you give up the goal to go 3-1, and then you challenged it and lost it.
Oh yeah,
that was ball game. Once they had scored that fourth goal there on that
14 seconds later or something like that, you give up the 4. Yeah.
And on a challenge, I don't understand. I'm not sure who makes the call on that challenge. I mean, whether it's the
replay
video
guys
coaches,
and
Cooper, but they thought for sure it was goaltender interference by the rule. If you read the rule, it absolutely wasn't.
right.
An incidental contact with the goalie on a rebound situation is not goaltender interference.
Right.
Like, yes, did he push the pad a little bit? Yes. Was it egregious? No, he was going for a rebound.
You know what?
Of the puck.
That's emotion taking over there, right? That's like, we got to stop this. Maybe we can get this call.
I wonder if it was, and Cooper afterwards said, well, it only hurts you if you give up the goal on the penalty kill, which he's right. But
they do have they were third in the league in penalty kill or something like that.
Yeah, well, yeah. But you also didn't have Anthony Cirelli on that penalty kill.
There you go.
Now, not that, he's not out there for the whole 2 minutes and, but he probably would have been out there for the first shift.
You're not expecting to give it up 14 seconds into the power play.
Does that change things? But, I don't know if it was they just thought it was because he hit the pads, or if it was a little desperation of, we're down 2 now, I feel this slipping away. Maybe I could steal that goal back.
The video guy is doing what? Giving him a percentage. Look, I think we got about an 80% chance we get this here, or it's certainly goaltender interference to me, or challenge this because it's 50-50. Like,
I would think, but they also have monitors on the bench, so the coach can look at it.
So he can make that decision.
Yeah, but I mean, they're alerting them,
right?
hey, there's possible goaltender interference. We think this is.
And then he looks at it before he challenges it.
Whether Brian Garlock and Nigel Kerwin said absolutely it is, or it might be, or it's maybe worth a chance. Who knows what they said? I mean,
I want to know who. I want to know who.
Tell you.
I want to know who to blame.
Yeah, well, I mean, Cooper afterwards said, "Coach got to eat that one." Now, whether he meant him or the assistants, I don't know. But
he didn't mean him. Trust me, he didn't mean him. Yeah, and it's also, they could have made him look good by not allowing that fourth goal.
Well, absolutely, but you're right. I mean, the pressure's on the Lightning tonight. No question about it.
God.
You've got home ice.
Nervous building tonight. You know what I mean?
It will be an early start at least. So
oh yeah,
maybe the Lightning were just sleepy. Maybe it was just such a late start they were asleep. I don't know.
Well, none of us got any sleep that night, but
afterwards. But I'm saying before.
This game's at 6:30, I think, right?
Yeah, so puck drop should be at 6:40.
Okay. Well,
so a little earlier than half an hour earlier than normal. So
they won't have to wait around quite as long. I'm kind of game for that. I'm ready for that. Now, look, they win the game, and then it's series on, and you try to win. You try to do what Florida did. You try to win 1 out of 2 at Florida.
But also say, look, if you look back at recent series with the Lightning, 2 years ago, the Lightning blew out Toronto in the first game.
Yep.
For the series, end up losing the series.
Yep.
3 years ago against Toronto blew out the Lightning in game 1 of the series.
And they lost, yeah.
And then Lightning came back and won that series. I remember a series against Boston. I think it was 2018. Boston, was up 6-2, 6-3. They won it. Braden Point was a -5 in the first game of that series. Lost it on home ice. Lightning went on to win the next 4, and Braden Point finished the series with a positive +- after being a -5 in the first game.
I mean, you don't know. You don't know until you get through game 2, and it could have a totally different feel for it, but it's not the position you want. I guess if it had not, the score is maybe deceiving to some degree with the power play goals, but, you were not really competitive after it was 2-1. You just never felt like you were ever going to be in that game.
You also had 6 power plays, which generally you don't have in a postseason.
Yeah,
game.
That's true too.
Although generally early in the first round, you will get more power plays than the rest of the postseason.
And that's because what? Referees are trying to.
I think they try to call it tight early.
Mm-hmm.
And
because I've always thought that they didn't call anything as they swallowed the
whistles. They don't call as much, and one of those power plays was a coach's challenge, so that one you have to call. That's not like someone. That's a rule. That's not the official put his arm up and called it. It's
a rule.
Coach challenged it, but I think they try to get control early and set the tone of what they're going to allow, what they're not, and then they ease up from there because the players I think adapt. Like, okay, we know we can't do this, so they don't do that stuff.
Yeah.
So, look, the pressure's on the Lightning, but going down 1-0 is not the end of a series.
No. If you treat it that way, then it will be.
Right.
And
now, you go down 0-2, having to go on the road for 3 of the next.
You've dug yourself a pretty deep hole there.
Yeah. 3 of the next 4 would be on the road at that point.
Yeah.
And you've got to win 4.
4 out of 5.
You got to win 4 out of 5, but 3 of the next 4 would be on the road. Like, that's
right.
That's tough. And, we know Florida's good. And the Lightning have not been great on the road this year.
Right.
But that doesn't mean in the playoffs they won't be.
It's the other part of it. You're playing the Stanley Cup champions,
Mm-hmm.
defending Stanley. This is a team that's been in the Stanley Cup 2 years in a row.
Let's not forget that too. Absolutely.
And all those guys know how to get there, just like when the Lightning knew how to get there, right?
Mm-hmm.
You get behind them, you don't come back. They know how to shut you down. So it'll be interesting, man. Looking forward to seeing that. And then the Rays got to get going, of course, out in Arizona. Then it's on to Santiago.
They gave up another leadoff home run tonight as we're taping this. It's 2-2 right now, though. Christopher Morel had a home run as well. But Taj Bradley gave up a leadoff home run.
Yeah, Taj is, he had a pretty good start to his season, and of late he's, had some early, I remember the game I covered, he had like a 32 pitch inning, his first inning.
Mm-hmm.
So they got to start winning games. You got to start winning games. You got to find a way to carve out maybe a 3-3 road trip, and get back here. And well, it'll be tough. They're playing two pretty good teams too, out in the NL West. All right, so we'll be back very late to talk about
another late one.
What the Bucs do with the 19th overall pick, even if they pick a guy. I'm waiting for this to happen. It hasn't happened yet. Watch this will happen now.
It happened a couple years ago.
Yeah, that's true.
They traded down to the first pick of the second round, didn't they? They took Logan Hall, right?
Yeah, that's when they took Logan, yeah. But now, did they have a previous pick in that draft or not? I can't recall.
I don't.
It seems like that they've made a first-round pick. I could be wrong. I feel like I've written a story on the first day about them choosing a player.
I want to say,
but perhaps
I'm looking this up now. No, Logan Hall was their first pick at the second. That's right.
Okay, was that after the Super Bowl or is that
2022 draft? So
okay, so several years after. Okay,
well, no, just 1 year. I mean, the Super Bowl was 2020.
2020, then 2021.
So it was after the next year.
Joe Tryon and then Logan
Joe
Hall.
Tryon was 21. Logan Hall, they traded out of the first round. They had a late pick. I mean, they went to they were a drive away from the NFC Championship.
See, that's a little harder to write. It's like nothing happened tonight, folks.
Because I remember waiting up to do the podcast, and then they traded out. I was like, now what do we do?
Let's hope that's not
you
the
were
case.
writing. I was trying to figure out what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I was trying to figure out what I was going to write. And then they did this, and then this guy was on the board, and they did. Usually, when you don't take a player, then it's all about, but what about this guy, and where'd you have that guy rated, and so on and so forth.
The other time they didn't have a number one pick would have been 2013.
Right. I don't know what happened there.
Yeah, I don't remember that one
either.
These
years tend to steamroll together. That might have been a Greg Schiano or Lovie Smith year. Probably Lovie Smith, I'm guessing. Or pre-Lovie Smith. Hard to say.
Yeah, I think that was the year. I think it's the year Lovie got there, right?
Yeah, it might have been.
Dominic was still there because the next year was.
Mike Evans traded their first-round pick for Darrelle Revis.
Oh, that was right. That's right.
Yeah. That was a great deal. They had him for 1 year,
yes,
coming off an ACL. And they also gave up, I think, 2 other picks, mid-round picks for him. Arguably the worst trade ever made in Buck history. Not that he was a bad player. He actually made the Pro Bowl that year.
Mm-hmm. Didn't
make a big difference in their team because they were clearly more than one Hall of Fame corner away from doing anything. I can remember being in Arizona, and the word was that they may trade their first-round pick for Darrelle Revis. And we're at the Biltmore. And I walked by Schiano, and him and his wife were a few wines into the evening, and I had found out that that what was on the board was their first rounder, and I went up to Greg and go, would you really consider, giving up a first round pick for Darrelle Revis? And almost before he could answer yes, his wife goes, well, why wouldn't he? He has no players. I was like, whoa. from the honest rope over here. So yeah, you do things sometimes when you're a little bit desperate, but that one will not go down in Bucs lore as one of their better transactions, because they signed him to I love this. They signed him to a series of 1 year deals, 1 year, $16 million deals. But basically he was a free agent after, they got him healthy. They got good tape, and they went on to New England. I think he won a Super Bowl, if I'm not mistaken. But But yeah, hopefully they'll make a pick. We'll be here to talk about it on Sports Day Tampa Bay. Go see our friends Breitling Boutique, International Plaza Mall. Check out the Navatiners, the Chronomats, NFL anniversary watches, all of that at Breitling Boutique. Let them know that you heard about it on Sports Day Tampa Bay. Be sure to listen to my radio show with Neil Ardman that is on on ESPN. I almost said ESPN Tampa Bay. At 9 a.m. We'll be on the air talking NFL draft as well. Thanks for listening. For Steve Versnick, I'm Rick Stroud of the Tampa Bay Times. Have a great day, everybody.